A very good morning. Welcome to Weekend Breakfast. The time is 24 minutes past 7 on Sunday, November the 6th. I have some very important news. Louise has messaged in. She says, David, good morning. Good morning, Disco David. I love your poppy, so thank you, Louise. Yes, you are. Oh, look at that. A close-up of my disco poppy. There you go. Thank you very much indeed, Louise. This one, I like this one as well. Les Calderwood. David, you have to be dedicated to a career in order to start a broadcast at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. New Year's honours list going. A rise to David Bull at 4 a.m. literally. I mean, this is great, isn't it? I'm loving that. Right, now, obviously, people are very exercised as well. We'll talk about this. Andy in Huddersfield, once again, we're talking about percentage pay rises. We're talking about nurses here. If you are a highly paid NHS manager, you'll get a bigger pay rise than a nurse, and that is absolutely wrong. Nurses have been used and abused by governments for decades as they knew they would never strike. Time they all walked out and finally get the pay they deserve. That's really interesting. Lots of others coming in. I'll just read the nurses one. Nurses strike, starve them out. If they are at food banks on full pay, they won't last 5 minutes on strike. So some very different opinions there. Well, joining us now is Rick Panesar, who is a broadcaster and PR expert. Good morning to you.
Morning, David.
Very good to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Shall we start with the nurses' strike? I mean, I think it's not in all the papers this morning. I think it's in the Observer.
Yes.
But I think this is a huge problem.
I think it is a huge problem on a number of levels. I mean, firstly, it's the first time in the history the RCN has actually gone on strike. And I think, the long and short of it is we need to pay the nurses. They do an absolutely key role and play a key role in the lives of looking after patients and things like that. And I don't think it's too much to ask for if we can give them the percentage I believe they're asking above inflation.
Well, it's quite a lot. 16% they want.
But in real terms, nurses' wages, when you take inflation into consideration, has fallen since 2012. So I think
everybody's wages have fallen.
Everybody's has in real time, but the nurses has quite.
You see, Renee and I are obviously very torn. I completely understand it from the point of view of the nurses, but also just in terms of where we are globally and fiscally and the country, and obviously having a 40 billion deficit that we've got to clear as well. What does it also mean? Because obviously the government has to obviously be consistent across everything. So I agree that there is a case for a pay rise. The question is what level of pay rise. But what does that then do, say, for people striking on the trains, all the other unions? Renee?
Well, and the other important thing to realise is that any pay rises that go into the NHS at the moment, they seem to be saying to the NHS, well, you handle the pay rise, you're not getting any extra money. So the government won't pay it. So what the NHS will do will scale back services yet again.
So again, we're going to see, which we're already seeing, ambulances not being cleared. So we've got 24-hour waits for ambulances in country areas, for example. We can't get people into A&E. We know that people can't see a GP. So now, although the nurses say, yes, emergency services will be provided, we were talking about it earlier, saying, so you're seen in A&E, but what happens next?
Yeah.
Because how do you get to a ward? Who's looking after you on the ward? And the whole system then collapses.
Of course it collapses. And the nurses wouldn't be striking if it didn't have an effect, because otherwise what would be the point of the strike?
I think this does beg a little bit of a bigger question. I mean, let's take the NHS as a system. So you mentioned, David, there is a knock-on effect. Say someone comes in from A&E and then there's not enough beds available. Obviously, there's a lot of people who cannot, who need social care, are not able to go into the system, who are taking up beds that may not necessarily need beds. And, it's a very well-known fact that the profession itself is not attracting new nurses. In fact, they're leaving the profession in droves. So I think, there's a lot of other external factors that are playing in here.
You see, I think there's also an issue over who we attract into nursing, and we've spoken about this before. The idea that you have to have a degree to become a nurse, I think, is a nonsense. And back in our day, because we're slightly older.
Speak yourself.
Back in my day, I mean, you could go in, and many of my friends who are nurses went in without degrees, and they are fantastic nurses.
Absolutely.
And we need to bring that back, actually. And then I think also there is also a huge restructuring that needs to be done. We need to get rid of all of that middle management and then reallocate that money and make sure that we do pay nurses properly and pay junior doctors, probably
Yes,
as well.
and I think if we had nurses on the wards who were training on the wards and didn't have to pay university fees because they lost their bursary, of course, as well a couple of years ago, if they could actually see a career path on the wards, learning to do what they really wanted to do, we would attract more nurses. Because not everybody is suited to getting a degree, but they make great nurses.
Yes, I think that is something that does need to be fixed on that front as well. I think, again, it's just a barrier to coming into to the profession.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Avrant Gibson, good morning to you in Essex. Good morning to you both. Brilliant show. Thank you very much. It's not trust in the NHS that we've lost. It's trust in our useless government who has failed us for years and haven't addressed the problem, staring them in the face from the NHS to immigration, etc. And good luck to the nurses. So, again, you're seeing this. The problem with this is it just pulls the public apart. Those in favour, those against, those people who are struggling. If you are waiting for a hip replacement and you haven't had it and you're in pain for 2 years, you're not looking very favourably on the NHS.
No, and ultimately it is affecting, the people, the British people of our country who need the NHS or use the NHS, for treatment. So ultimately, whether we point the finger at the government, whether we point the finger at the system or not enough funding, ultimately the people that suffer is us or people who need to use the NHS, which is a real shame.
Right. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Let's move on to your next one, which is The Observer, page 2.
Page 2, yes. Now, this is an interesting story. It's been doing the rounds a little bit over the last week or so. It's that time of the year again. We've got the climate conference happening, the UN climate conference, COP. Whatever people may think at the bigger picture, whatever effects it's having, we see Rishi Sunak, who firstly said he was not going to attend. I understand he's got a lot in his inbox at the moment with everything that's going on and what he inherited and things like that, and he was not going. So after a lot of criticism from environmental groups and from people within his party as well, and I think there was a little bit, when we look at it from a brand PR point of view, Mr. Boris Johnson was going to turn up, and
that's what this is about. Isn't that what this is about?
I think there's quite a big part.
Come off the fence.
Well, I am going to come off the fence. So basically, Boris Johnson was going to come and upstage Rishi and spoil the party.
Yes.
Boris Johnson himself, he's got his own brand to protect, so, he still wants to show that I'm still up there, I'm still fighting for us.
And he's an eco-warrior, we know that, Boris.
Well, Carrie is.
I think Boris is too. I mean, if you look at his family, look at his father, and Rishi is too, actually. Rishi's completely wedded to it.
But you see, to me, it just smacks of not actually knowing your own mind. Rishi Sunak, rightly, I thought at the time, said, I've got more important things to do. They're going to raid the pensions as well. That's the latest gimmick this morning. The fact is they're now going to try and, so you don't get tax relief, it's going to drop down to a 20p rate. They're basically going to steal about 10 billion off those people who've bothered to save for a pension. These are higher tax rate payers. But the thing is, they're also now talking about scrapping the triple lock. Now, personally, I'd rather he concentrated on that autumn fiscal statement and made sure it was absolutely robust instead of going to COP27, which quite frankly is just nothing more than a talking shop.
I do actually believe it is, and it's a lot of empty pledges that have been made, but this is also a time for Rishi to be seen as a world leader on the world stage. He is flying the flag for the UK, and I think this is probably going to be his first outing to see how he rubs shoulders with other heads of states and other world leaders. So I think.
So you think he should go?
I think he should go. Whether I believe the legacy of all the COP conferences are empty pledges and promises, or as they say, blah blah blah.
You are sitting very well on that fence.
You are. You're totally on the fence.
No,
but also there is no. So my understanding with COP27 is that there's going to be nothing binding coming from it. There's no agreement to be made.
That's so that they can have a COP28.
Exactly. So the point of this is literally to rub shoulders with each other, to use up all your air miles to get there, and contribute to the environmental problems we already have. And then of course they won't do anything when they're there anyway.
Yes, that is very true. But, you know, there was the Paris Climate Agreement where they were trying to keep, temperatures below 2 degrees. I think there was the 1.5 degree pathway. There have been pledges. It remains to be seen. You know, we are still just about on track. And, you know, call me ever the optimist. I do believe that, you know, if we can get to net zero by 2050, I believe the target was.
Oh, come on. What people want is energy. They want cheap energy. They need to be able to heat their homes.
David,
it's unachievable.
It is unachievable. Also, what, 200 new power stations in China? I mean, we are literally, doing things in the wind.
Put this planet in jeopardy?
But that's if you accept that we are actually going to put the planet in jeopardy, and any prediction they've made so far hasn't come true. But more importantly, and I think this is more important than having that debate, is that even if we went net zero tomorrow, it wouldn't make a difference to the world because of China and America.
No, that is true. And this is why we need to use, or collectively some of the world leaders need to use their influence and power. Yes, there are countries like China, the US, and even India as well, you know.
Yeah, India is a problem.
And I think there is a little bit of sort of climate justice that needs to be done. There's a lot of things about, you know, just because we have developed ourselves to a certain way and we can, use the technology and we have the funds to have, for example, renewable, cleaner energy, we've got to help to make sure these other countries can as well.
Yeah, it's the timeline. That's the thing I have an issue on. And I think also when people are struggling, I think we have to make sure that we look after people in this country and provide cheap energy, make sure the food prices come down. It is unaffordable. And also the levies and the fact that electricity, the price of electricity is pegged to gas, and that means renewables make an absolute fortune. All of that needs to change. I'll get off my hobby horse now. Shall we move on to the next one? Again, the Observer front page, I think.
Yes, immigration has been a hot topic this whole week.
The Observer today,
no, they're not all from the Observer. They just happen to come from that particular one. But mind you, you know, the immigration story has been all over the rest of the news as well. Now, it depends which way you look at it. So I know a lot has been said about it, and we don't have to sort of go over the old ground, how the system is broken, how things are happening. But so the headline is Novice Staff Are Making Key Asylum Decisions. So it looks like Suella Braverman, for whatever her shortcomings are, has decided, I know, I'm going to do something about this. But it doesn't bode well here. You know, they have got ex-customer service staff and salespeople from the likes of McDonald's, Tesco and Aldi. Now, there's nothing wrong, but exactly. So what we're talking about, these are inexperienced people who basically...
And what are they doing?
Well, they
allowing everybody's asylum claim.
Well, it's not as simple as that, but yes, they are managing and making decisions on asylum applications that are...
So let me get this right. People with no experience and have no understanding of the law are making decisions on who can stay in this country.
I would imagine there's an algorithm that they follow.
Yes, I'm sure, which mostly says stay. Or it's like one of those games, isn't it? All the arrows point to stay.
But I think there's a more serious implication here. You know, this is, you know, you're making decisions about people's lives here. You know, David, right? You know, they've had 2 to 3 days training, and do you know they refer to books or references in The Lonely Planet to figure out what the sort of histories and the background of these people may be. These are like potted histories without any full understanding.
So basically someone says, I come from this country, and they go through The Lonely Planet and go, ooh,
yes,
this looks like a nice country.
They could use horrible histories instead.
They could. But you'd also expect, come on, the Foreign Office should be involved, shouldn't they? People who at least have some sort of diplomacy.
So putting a serious spin onto it, because we're laughing, and it isn't. You're right.
It's
People's
not
lives
funny.
are. So this is the only thing I would say to that is this. So that if we need more staff in that area, which we certainly do, they have to come from somewhere. I'm assuming that out there on the unemployment bench, there aren't loads of people who are asylum approval specialists. So they're going to need to take people from other areas and presumably train them.
Absolutely. Now, this is the where it's begs belief, and I can't understand it. So the system is broken, right? It's stressed out. You're just adding more fuel to the fire. You know, the application, the asylum applications are not going to be handled properly. People are going to be fast-tracked through. Then, you know, people will fall through the net. So people who genuinely do need asylum and do want to settle here and work, you know, there'll also be the criminal elements and sort of undesirable people who are here to take the biscuit, quite
Maybe
frankly.
this is where they could use the army.
I have said this all along. I do not understand why we are not using the army,
Yeah.
not only just to make sure the safety and security of these people who are seeking asylum, but also just in terms of processing, just in terms of the fact they're really good at logistics, they're really good at this stuff.
They could have been given a task, doing it
100%.
properly.
Going through the algorithms. And that, to me, is much better than taking people who used to work in McDonald's.
Yes.
Don't you think?
I think I just had my head in my hands. You know, the whole system needs to be sorted, and this is by no way going in any way which means to sort this system out.
I mean, I think this goes back to just the standard of politician. We talked about this yesterday, and it leads nicely onto our next topic, actually. But, you know, I'm just beginning to wonder who's in charge of this country and what sort of credibility these politicians have. They lurch from one disaster to another, and it just seems to me they're rudderless. They don't really know. I don't think they're in touch with the population. I can see that, you know, just judging by what people are saying this morning, that clearly they don't think the MPs have a clue what they're doing.
Well, I think the way Rishi had to put some of his cabinet together with some of the, undesirables, you know, he's got to keep the 1922 committee happy. There's a lot of sort of the right-wing part of the party and the hawks and the rebels that if he doesn't have certain people in the party, there's already factions in there. You know, these are career politicians. They're more worried about looking after their post and their job than actually delivering for the
people. Does this
people.
not come back to that the spread of the Tory party is too wide? You know, saying we're a broad church means it doesn't work because the views are too disparate. So this is where you need a proper Conservative party, one that's more to the centre and left. Then you have Labour. Maybe they need to split as well. You know, maybe we've got to the point where everybody trying to be everything doesn't work for anyone.
So that's so interesting. So for a long time, the Conservative Party thought their problems were always about Europe. But given that we have sort of vaguely Brexited, they hope the Conservative Party would then reunite, and I don't think they've done that in the slightest.
No.
So that makes a very good... You make a great point there, actually. Is this the beginning of actually the Conservative Party splitting? I think you might be right.
Yes, it's too broad. It doesn't work. You've got the left fighting the right within the...
Now, if that happens, and if part of that party then goes and joins another party, then we're talking a very different game.
Of course we are. And actually, I think that's what needs to happen.
I think many people would think that. Talking of politicians not doing their jobs...
I get angry again.
We get really angry, like yesterday. God, you were furious
I was
yesterday.
furious.
You really were, and there were loads of tweets about how angry you can get, and I'm like, I know. So, Matt Hancock.
Right, so where do I start with this?
At the bottom.
Let's start at the bottom. I mean, it's all over the place, all the papers, this has been rumbling on. So, firstly, I've got to say, there is a serious aspect to this story, you know. Is it morally right?
No.
Right.
So
we've all agreed that.
No, let's all, yeah. And, you know, he was overseeing what was going on during COVID, and there were mistakes made. And, you know, he is responsible for, you know, people's deaths during COVID, which is really, really sad. As well as, you know, it's a bit of a disrespect to some of the families who have been affected by this. You know, there's also a petition that's out at the moment, which I think has garnered 40,000 signatures for Matt Hancock to be dropped from the show. And then there's also, you know,
find that on the show and sign it.
Well, fair enough.
40,001.
And, you know, he's also a serving MP at the moment. You know, you have your recessions, you know, it's not a recession, sorry, your time off during Parliament where you can go and do whatever you want.
Yeah, but they're not in recess.
They're not in recess, that's the thing. So he's a serving parliamentarian as well, and he is swanning off to the jungle.
He is missing the autumn statement. He is missing the most important part of government business.
Day-to-day work as a constituency
day-to-day
MP.
work. Now, if I was in West Suffolk, I'd be pretty furious.
Well, apparently he's got a hotline to the jungle, rumour has it, that he can be reached if he needs to.
Oh, well, that's useful.
Well, whilst he's got a bit of kangaroo whatsy going down, I don't think he'll be on the hotline. But looking at it from another angle, sort of, you know, this is the new brand Matt Hancock.
Well, he's trying to make it the new brand. Matt Hancock.
He is. Now, look, whatever anyone's opinion is, you know, is his career over as a politician? He's a bit of a has-been, and I think, well, that's that. So I'm sure it's been widely reported. how much he's getting paid to come on the show?
400,000.
400,000 reportedly, which probably sort of dwarfs his salary at the moment as he's getting for a politician. He's also got a book deal out as well.
Exactly.
Yes,
So the timing is brilliant because it's designed.
And this is his COVID diaries, and basically I think it's pretty much warts and all sort of an insight into what went on in the pandemic.
But I think it will
be from his
It will be
perspective.
his warts and all. It won't say. It will say that he threw a ring of steel around care homes.
Yeah,
He did the
it won't
complete
say
opposite.
about how they had PPE procurement, which is certainly under suspicion the way they did that. It won't be about the fact they discharged people to care homes when they should not have been
It won't
discharged.
be about the fact that they didn't escalate people from care homes to hospitals and instead wrote them out end-of-life meds. That's what makes me so angry as a doctor. People that could have lived didn't live. And actually, I don't think that book will say any of that. So it's a whitewash. It is a complete brand of Matt Hancock as a lovely, caring person.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to be a bit of show and tell. I think he's got some grievances about sort of his relationship with Boris Johnson. It wasn't the most rosiest of relationships, I might say. And I think this guy is out to rinse it, basically.
Yes.
And that's what he's going to do. I think
He's got a divorce. They're expensive.
yeah, he's got a divorce. He's got a new partner as well. You know. I think this is his new life.
I mean, clearly, everyone's going to vote for him to do the nastiest things and the nastiest challenges.
Can I ask you a question? Whilst we have talked about the serious thing, are you going to watch it tonight?
No. I don't watch TV, so
No,
no.
why not?
Right. Okay.
No.
Okay, well, I'm sure millions will be glued.
Oh, of course they will. Of course they will. And great, and actually entertaining. And if the public want to inflict suffering on him, then that's up to them.
I will just finish to say this is fine. If this is the career he wants, if he wants now to make himself into something, fine. Step down.
I agree with that,
Yeah.
100%. There should be a by-election.
Yeah, and then probably maybe or might be. I think there are
won't be.
certain
He will hang on.
parliamentary sort of standards or ways that he cannot trigger a by-election for certain reasons. I don't know exactly
Vote
the
of no
ins and outs,
confidence.
but
We'll see.
yeah.
Rick, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
Rick
you.
Panosal there, who is a broadcaster and a PR expert. After the break, we'll be taking your calls, your thoughts, your opinions. This is Talk TV. We're broadcasting live from the Talk Radio studio, and I am Disco Poppy, apparently.